Welcome to the Social Your Sales podcast. Social has changed the B2B and professional services sales landscape forever. We are here to help you navigate what you need to know and how to execute these new strategies. Whether you are a sales leader, individual producer, or a member of the C-suite looking for answers, this is the podcast for you. Now here are your hosts, Brandon and Erik.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, on Social Your Sales. Today I've got a gentleman, it's just me that's going to be interviewing him, Erik Holdo. We have Ranasinha on with us today, and he's a very interesting fellow. He's a marketer, provides marketing services for companies across the globe, actually. He's based out in the UK. You'll probably figure that out by his accent. Really interesting guy, though. Kind of likes to upset the apple cart a little bit in his thoughts about where marketing is, where it's going. And I think you'll find the next about 30 minutes or so interesting as we delve into some of the trends about what's happening and really what marketing needs to start doing differently than what they've been doing in the past. So hang in there and listen up with Ranasinha coming up. Well, welcome to Social Your Sales. I'm Erik Holdo. Brandon Lee will not be joining me today. He went off and got a little bit of that cough that seems to be going around. It's going to be just fine. He's coming back from the hospital today, and we decided not to make him come into the studio. So hope he gets better very, very well, or very much soon. Very much soon. That's great English. Now I'm going to be speaking to an Englishman. Or one who plays one on TV. Ranasinha, is that?
Perfect, Erik, yes. As though we rehearsed it, but we didn't. Very good.
Yeah, and I was introduced to G through a mutual friend over LinkedIn, over that social network we call LinkedIn. And as I got to reading some of G's posts and some of his opinions on things, I found him to be very interesting. He's in that marketing space. And G, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, what your company is all about, and what markets you serve?
So our agency is called Kexino. That's Kexino. We're primarily an agency looking to help startups and small businesses, primarily that space, B2B and B2C, but it is probably 70-30 weighted towards B2B, I'd say. Even though we're based the headquarters is based in Europe, around 80-90% of our clients are based in the US. Who'd have thought? Apparently this internet stuff really works, Erik. I don't know if you've ever noticed. We, in terms of the agency is concerned, we operate in a distributed working environment. We have since day one. We're just coming up to 14 years old now. So you can imagine 14 years ago, adopting a remote working environment was a pretty bold step. Absolutely. I like to say that we were working from home before it became fashionable. We've been doing that since. There's 19 of us in 9 countries. 9 of us are in the US. The rest are in Europe, South Africa, and I have 2 people in Australia. And that's us.
Very good. Very good. Well, so you've been active on LinkedIn, and as you know, our podcast, Social Your Sales, is about that social selling concept and how it is playing out nowadays. I think we've seen some significant changes over the last year and a half that have really made this more topical than ever. Clearly, we're facing potentially new lockdowns in some areas, although the public appetite for that remains to be seen. And but what we have learned is that CMOs and marketing departments in general are starting to rethink the way they spend their money. and in whether that's in the MarTech stack that they're using, and the ROI that they expect to get out of it, or whether it is the let's say the spend itself. Recently, I was reading an article and thought about you. It was actually the Gartner study that was done back in March of this year. And last year, Gartner came out with a study saying that most marketing senior execs believed that their budgets were going to pretty much stay the same, or they might even increase the following year. And what they found out is across the board, marketing budgets have been cut. They've been cut up to an average of about 11%, which can be a pretty big chunk of change. And it's caused them to rethink where they're spending some of that money. Not as much in paid ads, not as much necessarily in offline, I should say, offline paid ads, or not as much in event sponsorship and things like that. What are you seeing as far as your clients, as far as what they are asking you to do as far as marketing budget, spend is concerned? Are you seeing that shift? Is it all of it going to digital with very little now going to offline sources and more traditional media, or is it, how are you seeing it?
Well, I think we need to begin by taking a little bit of a holistic view of the whole space. And I think what we're seeing now is a correction based upon how marketing has been perceived by CEOs and CFOs, well, let's say board members, over the last 5 to 10 years, perhaps longer. And it's really been about the way that the C-suite have viewed marketing, and CMOs, marketing managers, heads of marketing, over that time. And I think marketing is in crisis. And I think there was a fork in the road post-COVID. Well, if there is ever a post-COVID, because it seems to be it has more comebacks than Elvis at the moment. This stuff, right? It's coming back again. I get the feeling that 99% of the marketing that we see as a consumer, and by consumer I mean B2B as well as B2C, it seems to have been created to be more concerned with efficiency than effectiveness. And I think it's because marketing in a certain profile of organization is seen like a branch of logistics or something. And the problem is too many people are confusing efficiency with effectiveness.
Is that partially due to a lack of firm methods of attribution?
I think that's part of it. Yes, but I think it's because this is a potentially controversial statement here, Erik. So hold on to your seats. I think because marketing is ideologically disliked in the higher echelons of business. Okay, I think CEOs and CFOs have an inherent distrust in marketing, and the reason for that, I contend, is that because marketing, if it's done right, if it's done well, actually goes against the grain of rational, logical, sequential thought processes of which every other or most of every other facet of business runs. But the thing is, because a certain element, from a strategic aspect of marketing, cannot be formulated by going through a rational, logical, sequential process, because the output, the target, human beings, aren't machines that always think or do something in the same way. They don't behave logically or rationally, which means effective marketing involves out-of-the-box thinking and creative experimentation and all this sort of stuff, which finance-driven people, classical economists, see as superficial and irrational, and it scares most of them to death, to be honest. We have the current situation where marketing tactics are driven by efficiency nerds.
Yeah.
So you sign up for a bunch of MarTech services, you slap together some communication based on a Canva template or an Unsplash image that we've all seen a gazillion times before, right? Right, and then it vomits out 50 different versions of a communications creative, and then they measure the one that generates the most return. Now, sure, that's efficient, but is it effective? Does it actually shift product to an appreciably greater extent to whatever the business was doing already? I contend it's not. Now, just to be clear, I'm not having a pop at Canva or Unsplash, right? Please not. Canva, Unsplash, I love you guys to bits, right? These tools have made it easier for sort of non-creatives to put together something that looks, half decent. And, these businesses should be applauded for all that. But what I'm saying is that buying a set of Japanese kitchen knives doesn't make me Gordon Ramsay.
Right.
It's not about the tools. And by chasing efficiency metrics, businesses end up looking the same as everybody else and saying the same thing as one another. We've all said it before. If you see a piece of creative created by one company in any industry and you cover up the logo, 10 will get you 5 that the same piece of marketing could be used by pretty much anyone in that market space, which is a problem. And what they're doing is conflating. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, so what they're conflating is efficiency with effectiveness. So what we're getting to is a continuous pursuit to a direct ROI based upon a business calendar quarter.
Yeah.
And CMOs and marketing managers are tasked with making a tangible uptick in revenue based upon a shareholder report, which, as you know, from a strategic standpoint, just falls to pieces. So why is the average tenure of a CMO about 18 months? Right? How can you put a strategic plan together over the course of 18 months? It's ridiculous.
Well, and it's been the case that over the past 5 years, that average tenure has dropped from 24 months down to about 18 months, and it continues to drop because this is partially where I go back to the attribution difficulty. It's really difficult to say, here's the true impact we are having on sales. Now, let me go back. I think that there's a fundamental problem. When you look at the C-suite, for the most part, when you look at the CEO, CRO role, most of that tends to be a sales-focused person who has arisen through the company, right? You don't have a CMO rarely will become a CEO, if ever. And when you start drilling back, and especially in the B2B sales world, there is that feeling that, hey, the marketing guys, they create the brochures. They do those mailers that we need. Yeah, once in a while, I may get an MQL from them, but most of the time that doesn't really turn into anything. I've got my accounts I go after. Now, there are some companies that are deeply immersed in this business development role of sales that just takes MQLs in and converts them into sales accepted leads of some sort, and they work that list. But in most, at least big ticket item B2B sales, that's not the way it works. It is not it's not a fact that you can just push it off to these sales development people. There has to be a relationship that's built by a sales rep over time, usually with some sort of an account list. But in any case, the marketing folks at that point are sort of seen as these brochure people, plus they put on the events, whether it's the sponsorships or the trade shows and whatnot. And, everyone says, gee, they spend a lot of money, and I'm the one that goes out and sells everything. But so, I believe that created a need for that marketing group to be able to prove their ROI more effectively. In 30 years ago, marketing got to spend whatever they wanted. I mean, advertisements, traditional advertisements, pre-internet, pre-digital spend was a big deal, and the marketing suite ran the roost. No longer the case. Now that there's better attribution that can relate your efforts to the actual results, I think it's become more and more difficult for that marketing suite to define themselves. But interestingly, so in this Gartner Group study that was done, 80% of the CMOs reported that they were solely responsible or played the leading role in the company's digital transformation strategy. And I found that to be really interesting. It shows a level of bravado and probably arrogance in that marketing suite that really they're putting themselves out there as that forefront leader. That means they're leading technology decisions. They're leading potentially product R&D decisions or having a significant influence in it. Is that where marketing needs to spend their time?
I think there's two things here. I think firstly, this whole efficiency effectiveness thing is reinforced by this pervasiveness of a direct causation ROI model that marketers are being held account to by senior management, by the C-suite. And they do that because other areas of the business can be driven and measured by that same tangents, right? Now, if you're manufacturing something and you can reduce production costs while maintaining quality or even increasing productivity, then that's a good thing, right? What's not accepted is that marketing doesn't work that way. It never has, and it never will. And I think what happens is that marketers have played this game and have accepted this position because they've been on the back foot for the last 5 to 10 years. They've believed the BS that marketing is a cost and not an investment. Okay, and they're trying to justify their role, their position, at every step of the way. But what happens is that quite often, obviously, there are enlightened organizations out there who actually see marketing as part of the value creation process as much as manufacturing is, the so-called Austrian School of Economics theory, okay? But marketing needs to become that ground zero for growth. And what happens is that marketers aren't speaking up for themselves. Ultimately, the problem is they don't speak. You mentioned that CMOs rarely become CEOs, right? Which is a fact, right? And I contend that one of those reasons is because marketers get too bogged down, and we all do it, Erik, right? We love the jargon, the terminology that we use, within our own little groups, right? But this is very scary stuff to economist, accountant, logic-based, process-driven individuals at the C-suite. Marketers need to speak the language of finance, and they don't. And why are so few CMOs on boards? This is one of the reasons, because as marketers, we use words like, resonance and engagement and salience and, this sort of stuff scares finance people to death, right? They want something, they want a clean mechanical transaction between investment and return. And coming up with all this hippy-dippy sort of marketing-y stuff debases our authority and are worth to actually be at that boardroom table. We're our own worst enemy because we've had to be, and we haven't stood up for ourselves as marketers to actually be seen as an intrinsic part of the business. Like I said, the value creation process, not letting our role be classed as a cost.
Social Your Sales will be right back.
Is your sales team struggling to hit quota? Are your buyers ignoring your sales requests for conversations? The third tier of digital transformation is social. Is your team equipped to meet this challenge? This show is brought to you by FunnelAmplified. We help sales teams align their sales process with how modern buyers prefer to make their purchase decisions. FunnelAmplified is a social selling platform that drives new opportunities with your sales team, using proven social selling tactics to drive pipelines and hit quotas. With FunnelAmplified, it's quota achieved. To learn more about FunnelAmplified or start a free trial, please visit us at FunnelAmplified.com.
Let me ask this: in the changes that you've seen now that are coming forward, is there a new focus on developing new go-to-market strategies, on new service channels, new sales channels? This has to be weighing on a CMO's mind, because in some cases the sales force has gone away, or they have consolidated. Products can't be seen in person as frequently, and there has to be a different way of showing value to the potential target market in that product. So, is this? Do you think this has taken this group by surprise, or that they are well prepared for it?
I think the traditional sales profile, and certainly the C-suite, have been definitely put on the back foot. They have been taken by surprise, without a doubt. I think any marketer, any marketer who actually understands the opportunity that's now presented to us, rather than, oh my goodness, we can't go on autopilot any longer, right? Should be very excited. Okay, we have I really believe this, Erik. We have a golden opportunity to get back to the heart and soul of marketing, about the power of human connection. The reason why most of us got into marketing in the first place, right? As marketers, we've spent years being preached to and preaching about the value of, fully integrated experiences and campaigns, whether it's digital to in-person to out of home to, everything in between, right? And that experiences are not made at a single touch point in time. And they're seamlessly woven together. And every moment should be distinctive, relevant, valuable, and contributing to something that's worth remembering. Yeah. So I think the salesperson is not going to go away, but it's an opportunity for the sales teams. Marketing has a direct line for driving customer insights into the hands of every salesperson for more meaningful conversations. So it's the opportunity that we've been saying but not doing, right? To have marketing and sales coordinate across every touch point, rather than just at the point of negotiation or transaction, so that marketing and sales can understand at a much deeper level what content matters to each prospect through each step of the journey.
And of course, this brings us to ABM. I think account-based marketing is the attempt by many to bring marketing and sales closer together, strategically working together after, to go after certain accounts, some subset of accounts, I guess. As far as I'm concerned, this is what we've been doing all along, but now there's a new term for it.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more, right? Quite often, and I hear this a lot, right? People of a certain age who are still in marketing, obviously I'm talking about me because, you're much younger, obviously, by decades, right? Right. But it seems like we have to call something a different name so that people younger than us will actually take us seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly.
So we get the term life cycle marketing for email, right?
Yeah.
Email. Oh, you abandoned your cart. Did you, it's an email. You call it what you want, right? ABM is just what marketing should have been all the time.
Right.
But because it's called ABM, it's something new and it's not tainted with history, with old fogies like me touting the effectiveness of what is now called ABM. But at the end of the day, ABM, so what? Delivering just-in-time relevant messages to a target audience segment. Really?
Yeah.
This is revolutionary?
I thought I was doing that with variable data print in the 90s, but,
really, have we learned nothing? Is it Groundhog Day? Are we just doing this over and over again? What's going on?
Yeah, the pundits will talk about it as if it's the next saving grace to the marketing world. And
hey, look, if it needs a name change, if it needs a rebrand in order to be implemented, it's got my vote. Let's just do it.
Well, this brings me back. This brings me back to social selling, because really, social selling. What we're talking about when we talk about social selling is simply having another channel to build a relationship with a particular prospect. I will say I'm a firm believer that the true cold call is dead. There are so many that are out there saying, "Oh no, it's not. You don't understand it." And I said, as a matter of fact, I had a discussion the other day with one that said, No, cold calling is absolutely not dead. It's very important. Let me give you an example. I was just talking to a friend of mine who referred me over to somebody. I placed a call with them, had a meeting 3 days later, and closed the deal a week after that. I said, wait a second. You had an introduction. You had his friends introduced.
Maybe it needs to be rebranded, Eric. Maybe it should be called lukewarm call.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a totally different game than traditional cold calling. But
tepid call. But it's got a ring to it, don't you think?
The social selling term, I hear so many say, "Oh, I've tried it; it doesn't work. You can't sell on LinkedIn." Well, of course you can't sell on LinkedIn if what you're posting is, "Here's what I do. Here's how much I charge. Buy from me." No, that's not social selling. That's not what we're talking about.
That's not selling. That's not selling, full stop. Whether it's through a social environment or whether it's a face-to-face environment, if all you're doing is talking about yourself, you're not going to be around for long. It's the usual stuff. Customers won't buy from you until they've heard of you, right?
Yeah. And I've always believed that it's the digital cocktail party, that when you're walking in, you walk into a cocktail party, you don't start off with somebody saying, "Hi, my name's Erik. Here's what I sell." Yeah.
How many do you want?
How many do you want? Press hard. The third copy is yours. No, of course
it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's just like, remember the days when we used to go into stores? Remember those days, right? Now, we used to go into a store and you'd walk into a store, supposing it's a clothing store. And within 3 milliseconds, a sales assistant would be pouncing on you to ask you whether you needed any help. You've just wiped your feet on the mat. You haven't even got into the store, right? Yeah. That's the scummy sales tactics, which don't work in reality, and they don't work on the digital channel either. It's the same thing. It's like, the analogy I always use, it's like proposing marriage on a first date, right? You don't do it, right? Or if you do, you get locked up very quickly, right?
Well, I I did my first time around, and well, it worked out for 25 years, but that was about it.
Well, yeah, I'll take my hat off to you, sir.
Of course, not anymore, but it worked for 25 years, so that's good.
It's selling's about relationships, whether it's online, offline, whatever. Okay. Now, social channels give us the opportunity to build that relationship in other ways than we've been doing in the past. Unfortunately, as marketers, we tend to ruin any technology-based advantage that comes across, right? Always, right? Some new fangled idea comes along and 10 will get you 5, a marketer will come along and ruin it for everybody else. That's what we do, right? Yeah. QR codes, right? QR codes suddenly had a boost. We thought, okay, great. What happens? You go to a restaurant, you scan the QR code to see the menu, and what do you get? You get a PDF that you got to zoom in and zoom out on your phone. Come on, really? Have we learnt nothing? So it's marketers we are our own worst enemy, and we're trying to create shortcuts to generate that affinity, that credibility, that trust that can only come from being there regularly at the channels where our prospects frequent.
So let me ask you then a final question. With social selling, what can marketers do to incorporate, what do you think the most important aspects are to incorporate into social selling, into their overall process? Because it can't sit out on an island. It can't be just its own process. It must be incorporated into the rest of the standard sales process that sales in a B2B environment is using. So what would you think the most important aspects for marketing to support the social selling concept amongst the sales teams? What do you think the most important thing is for those marketers to bear in mind and even to provide their sales teams?
I think it's one word: listen, right? It's actually not taking the proactive, dominant position in the engagement process in that conversation, right? We need to reform marketing by getting people to accept that value is subjective and context dependent and meaning dependent, and that value and brand is formed in the mind of the customer, right? And it's as marketers, we have to admit and acknowledge that value is produced as much by the singer as it is by the song, right? So it's, as I said, marketers have been told time and time again that everything has to be rational and reactionary, but you can't build empathy. I mean, empathy is another word to go with listen, is empathy. You can't build empathy if you're just going by this purely transactional, sales activation driven type relationship, because, then you're not selling, you're order taking, right? If I go to a fast food joint and I order a burger, a portion of fries and a milkshake, the person taking that order is not selling to me, right? Now, if that person then said, well, could you, can I interest you in maxing that portion of fries and the drink for an extra 30 cents, 50 cents? Is that selling? No, that's reading from a script. That's telemarketing, right? But if I'm in a restaurant and the waiter noticed that I ordered the fish and says to me, you know what? I got a really nice Cabernet Sauvignon which will go with that fish. Can I get you a glass for you to try? Now that's selling. That's trying to build a relationship. That's having empathy with the customer over and above what you're trying to sell. And I think that I don't want to use the word authenticity, because if you try to be authentic, then you're not authentic, are you? Right? You've just shot yourself in the foot, right? You can't try to be authentic, right? It's like trying to be a human being. You either are, well, So I think it's just, it's understanding and allowing yourself to be contradicted by the position that's being held by your customer. You don't have all the answers. Your solution may not be the right solution for the customer, and you need to be big enough, bold enough, and ugly enough to be able to admit that and to walk away and not try to sell just to make some sales quota. Sales as a process needs to change, as does marketing, and they need to work hand in hand together and not seen as polar opposites pulling both ends of a rope as a tug of war.
Yeah, well, I agree, and I'm going to shamelessly steal something that you said, which is, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but value is provided both by the singer as much as by the singer as well as the songwriter. I guess we'd
right.
Say. And that is, I mean, really, if you think about it, marketing is the songwriter, but ultimately the salesperson is the singer. And they have to be able to put their own brand and their own style on what it is the songwriter has presented.
And every member of the band needs to play their part. Otherwise, it's a cacophony.
Absolutely. Well, G, I really appreciate the time. I find it very interesting every time I get a chance to speak with you. If our any of our listeners would like to get a hold of you to look into more about what you folks are doing, how can they get a hold of you? LinkedIn, is that the best way?
Well, we're talking about social selling, right? So it would be foolish of me not to talk about LinkedIn. So yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can get hold of me through the website kexino.com, and I'll be very happy to speak with you. And I won't ask for the sale on the first call. Good
choice. All right, G, thanks very much, and hope you stay healthy in the months to come. We get through the rest of this, so we can all start doing some flying, and maybe I'll catch up to you one day across the pond there.
You too, Erik. That's great. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you for listening to the Social Your Sales podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. Social is meant to be social, and sharing is a great way for us to meet you and get to know you. Click on share and tag us at FunnelAmplified, or just use #SocialYourSales.